gather.
That's right.
So even at Layla, there is nothing to what? Gather. That meant that whole Yom was the Sabbath. They were to rest. And everything that they cooked, they had to make sure it was enough for the first day that morning, for the next day. He says unto them, now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh Yom to gather, but they found none. Now, I'm sure they probably went out after they thought their time of rest was up, but there was nothing there. Why? Because the Sabbath was still active.
That's right.
It was not over. Very important for us to understand this. Now, it happened that some of the people went out on the Sabbath together, but they found none. Verse 28, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my Torah, my instructions? See, for Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the 6th Yom, Lakim, for 2 Yamim. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th Yom. This is why we go nowhere. We don't go to the beach. We don't go to parks. The only park we go to is where we park it. And that's here. Unless there is somebody that is desiring to come and be in class, we do not move. Because they didn't come out of their tents. That meant they had everything they needed until the next Yom or the next Yom. Why? Because it was a time of rest. He was teaching them after being in this way of life where you are bombarded, where you are beat, where you are treated like a slave. I'm trying to show you how to rest. And they were hard at it. That is why we go nowhere. We don't buy, we don't sell, we don't cook. We cook way over, so on the Sabbath, the only thing we do is have class. All day. All young. And then we sleep. And we eat our dinner. And we watch a movie. And then we go to bed and wait for the next morning. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because it is a time to what? Rest.
Right.
We're not going out there doing, because I want the Abba to baruch my life, and I want to walk in obedience. And you can't walk in obedience if you are walking contrary to his instructions. Now, many would say, well, that was during that time. No, the Sabbath is the Sabbath.
Right.
But we're trying to change it up. It is the Sabbath. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And this is how we're supposed to keep it. And he said, let them remain and not go out of his place on the 7th Yom. So the people rested on the 7th Yom. And they had that white coriander seed, and it was like sweet like honey. So I'm thinking, it's a lot of stuff you can do. Now, you have to understand, you have to make sure your heart is ready for that. Now, coriander seed, I'm sure, is much softer on the bowels than wheat. Because he gave them coriander seed. He didn't give them wheat. So I'm inclined to believe that's what we need to look for. Some coriander and make our own bread from that coriander. Y'all follow me?
Yes.
Because I believe it's easier on the digestive system. Because this is what they ate, and it was sweet. And it wasn't no additives and no preservatives, and they didn't have to worry about, being overweight, and they didn't have to worry about sicknesses because it was natural and it was healthy for them.
Right.
It's important we understand these things and see these things. But once again, this is what they did, and so they rested. They didn't do anything until the next Yom. Important for us to understand too. Some people got that I got the go bug. Man, I gotta hurry up. Soon as the nightfall comes, I'm out of here. We have to understand. Let's use wisdom.
Right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
All right, chapter 17. We only have 16 verses, I believe. Yes. Let's read 8 verses again.
Chapter 17, verse 1.
Yes.
And all the congregation of the children of Yasharal set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of Yahuwah, and camped in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people strove with Moshe and said, give us water, Mayim, to drink. And Moshe said to them, why do you strive with me? Why do you try Yahuwah? And the people thirsted there for water, for Maim. And the people grumbled against Moshe and said, why did you bring us out of Mitzrayim to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Then Moshe cried out to Yahuwah, saying, what am I to do with this people? Yet a little, and they shall stone me. Verse 5. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, pass over before the people, and take with you some of the elders of Yasharal, and take in your hand your rod with which you smote the river, and go. See, I am standing before you there, and the rock of Horeb. And you shall smite the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people shall drink. And Moshe did so before the eyes of the elders of Yasharal. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the strife of the children of Yasharal, and because they tried Yahuwah, saying, is Yahuwah in our midst or not? Verse 8. And Amalek came and fought with Yasharal and Rephidim. And Moshe said to Yahush, choose for us men, and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I am stationing myself on the top of the hill with the rod of power in my hand. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, very important. Let's look at verse 6. Behold the elders of Yasharal. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Yasharal, and because they tested Yahuwah, saying, is Yahuwah among us or not? Now, once again, we see there's no problem with this right here, because he did exactly what the Abba told him to do.
Right.
We'll find something else that happens. Now, I wanted to show this because I wanted us to see Massah and Meribah. It means to prove. Massah means to prove. Meribah means to contend, as in a bitter quarrel. Yasharal was behaving very badly with her Yahuwah. And this is why the quarrel of a bitter wife can wear a person down. Now you have to understand, this is basically this person's, this is a footnote from the Abrahamic covenant scriptures. And this is what this person believes that means. Now you have to understand, nobody wears Abba Yahuwah down.
Right.
Period. Nobody. And though the children of Yasharal were quarrelsome, they still did not affect Abba Yahuwah to where he was worn down. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. And I want to say this. Many times people get mad and say, oh, well, she's just fussing. She's just always quarrelsome. You have to understand something. If a woman that it has never really fussed and done those things, and you see her doing that, you have to ask the question, why? You can always put that on the woman and say, well, the woman is just being quarrelsome. You have men that provoke women to do things. It's true. So it's two sides to every story. Just like there's two sides to every coin. You can't just take the coin and say, oh, well, you know, women are just quarrelsome and don't nobody want to hear no fussing woman. If you're with a person, and just use, I'm just going to use it as an analogy because we've known people like this, where when the brother would get frustrated, he would take the money he had and go buy him a pair of tennis shoes, knowing that they needed food in the house and bills need to be paid. So what you think that woman is going to be provoked to do? Sit up there and praise him for his deed? She gonna raise hell. Why? Because now you've taken food out of the mouth of your children. Not to mention, you have just put us in a position to be evicted or lose our place of abode, right, or be in the dark or be without water. So once again, that is going to provoke a person to do what? To fuss and be frustrated. Mm-hmm. That is why we have to be careful of how we pin things and say. Because don't nobody want to be with a woman that fuss all the time. Don't no one want to be with a brother that don't know what he's doing. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Once again, it's important that we understand, because if you follow behind a lot of people's theories and a lot of people's interpretation, your stuff will be all jacked up and messed up. You have to understand that, once again, people have a lot of things they put out there. And unless you know what's going on in that home, then keep your mouth closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't know why that Isha or Asha is fussing. It could be very well that there's a situation and she's trying to convey her thoughts and she's trying to make it known without going to the extremes of doing something else.
Sure.
So it's important that we understand that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to interject that. All right, let's read starting from verse 8. Let's read verse 9 all the way to verse 16. Yeah.
Then Amalek came and fought with Yasharal in Rephidim. And Moshe said to Yehush, choose us some men and go out. Fight with Amalek tomorrow. Fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of power in my hand. So Yehush did as Moshe said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moshe, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And so it was when Moshe held up his hand that Yasharal prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moshe's hands became heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side, the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So Yehush defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, write this for a remembrance in the book, and recount it in the hearing of Yehush. For I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the Shemayim. And Moshe built an altar and called his name, Yahuwah is my banner. For he said, because Yahuwah has sworn, Yahuwah will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, Amalek. Now, Yahshua was not taught pacifism, but self-defense. So they fought for survival, while many in the churches teach a form of pacifism. We do not find this in the scriptures. We are to pursue shalom, but when the enemy comes knocking at our door, we respond according to the severity of the situation, as I said earlier. We don't be, pacifists where we just sit and say, oh, well, whatever, they can beat us on the head. We just turn another cheek. That's the wrong verse, because that is not what that means. And so he's saying, look, no, they had to fight. Now you have to understand, once again, remember when they left Mitzrayim, they were ready for what? War, because they left with tools. They left with weapons. Thank you. They left with weapons, so they were ready for the battle. So it wasn't like they weren't ready. So he's like, no, we're going to fight this. Now you have to understand what would cause them to come out when word got out. Now, mind you, in my mind, I would always think, don't nobody know what's going on with the children of Yahshua. They were open. Everybody knew what was going on with them as a people. Everybody knew what was going on. All the nations knew what was taking place with them. They knew they marched around the mountain 40 years. It wasn't like he kept them hidden. He wanted to make people see and know what was taking place. So when people found out that they, especially the Amalekites, where it says, now remember the last words that Yahuwah is saying to the children of Yasharal is letting them know that I'm going to be with you no matter what. I will always be there. Now, this section of Amalek follows immediately on the words that Yahuwah is among us or not, as a censor on the doubts of Yasharal and as a reaffirmation that Yahuwah is ever at hand to save Yasharal. So immediately after that is said, now they're ready to fight. Are you hearing me? They're ready to fight. They're ready to come out battling. And so this is why it's important that we understand that no situation we get in is ever above him or ever beneath him. Then came Amalek, on hearing of their strife and thirst. And it is so now that we see Yahush is ready for battle. Now let's look at this. He was a member of the family of the Elishama, of the son of Hamud, prince of the tribe of Ephraim, the Midbar 2:18. It would appear from this passage, when we know his name was Hoshea, was also known to Moshe by this name. So the statement Moshe called Hoshea, the son of Nun, in 13 and 16, serves merely as a classification that Hoshea and Yahush were the same person. Because remember, he changed his name from Hoshea to Yahush, which means one who saves or redeems. So he had to go in and he had to fight. Mind you, he's a young man, but he's fit for the battle. So he goes out and he goes and fights. So they go and they cause the men to go to battle. He says, choose out. The word us denotes Moshe and Yahush. Moshe accordingly placed Yahush on the same level with himself. And why is this? Is because he sees the level of integrity and the willingness to do what needs to be done. You never put a person on the front line that's skittish and scary.
Right.
Because they're not going to fight, they're going to run.
Right.
Never, ever, ever. Excuse me. Men, brave and fearing, renowned for their powers or prowess and skilled in the art of war. So they're ready to go out to battle. And so it is those that have to go out, Moshe and Haran and Hur, they go out. And they're on the rock, and Moshe is to sit on the rock to help hold his arms up. Now you have to understand, anytime we see a rock, we always can allude to that being the Mashiach. That being an idiom or a symbol of the Mashiach in the lives of the children of Yahshua. And so it's very important. I unfriended someone to Yom because they were talking about if you are looking at the trash, talking about the New Testament, that trash, and then a young lady told him, she said, no, you're trash. And the way he began to speak about that lady and really just defame her was very, and this person is supposed to be Yahshua, like he was really very vulgar with his words, and he was very disrespectful to this lady. And I went and I'm like, how in the world did I friend you? But I quickly went and unfriended him, and I kept my words. I wanted to really go in. I said, but you know what? People like you, all the best thing can be done to you is just unfriend you, because you don't want to listen to nobody has to say. But he really did, and I would encourage you all that are following him, go check out his page. It don't take much. All you got to do is follow somebody that's talking about the renewed covenant being trash.
Right.
I can't think of his name, but his name is all in Hebrew. And you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, he went off, and when I mean went off, he went off on that lady, and he began to speak about her in ways that were horrible, and he didn't even have to do that.
Right.
He did. He was very vulgar, and he was horrible. And so I would advise you all that are following him and that are following with us to unfriend him. Just unfriend him. And like I said, because anybody that believes that the renewed covenant is trash and it's garbage and you know, and people talking about, well, in order to, you know, they took one book and divided it up into two. I'm like, you still missing the point. So you are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Right.
Because I'm not going to debate with people. I'm not going to strive with people. You don't want it, and I'm not going to strive with you. But I can. If you don't believe, that's one thing. You keep your opinions to yourself. But when you start defaming a Cody's, and you start being vulgar, and you start talking about them in a way that is belittling them because of their size, I have issues.
Right.
Yeah, he really did. So I would advise you all to unfriend him, and I did, and I unfriended him, and I encourage you to do the same thing. You all know who I'm talking about. Those of you that are friends with him, unfriend this person, because this person is not truly does not have the character, neither does he have the nature of Yahshua. He's just a wannabe.
Right.
And so you don't want to be following that. All right, let us turn our attention to the scroll of Shoftim, chapter 4. And we're going to begin at verse 4, and we are talking about Deborah. And we're still talking about, once again, when he let go, and we're looking at the different leadership. This is really dealing with leadership qualities and just dealing with the Abba speaking when you haven't seen it itself. All right, chapter 4, beginning at verse 4, and we're going to read all the way to chapter 5, to verse 31. All right, let's read. Let's read 8 verses, please.
And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was ruling Yasharal at that time. And she was dwelling under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim. And the children of Yasharal came up to her for right ruling. And she sent and called for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Quedesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Has not Yahuwah El of Yasharal commanded, Go, and you shall draw towards Mount Tabor, and shall take with you 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun, and I shall draw unto you Sisera, the commander of Yabin's army, with his chariots and his company, at the Wadi Kishon, and shall give him into your hand. And Barak said to her, If you go with me, then I shall go. But if you do not go with me, I do not go. And she said, I shall certainly go with you. Only there shall be no esteem for you in the journey you are taking. For Yahuwah is going to sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. So Deborah arose and went with Barak to Quedesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Quedesh. And he went up, 10,000 men under his command. And Deborah went up with him. Verse 11.
Mm-hmm.
And Hereb, the Canaanite of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moshe, had separated himself from the Canaanites and pitched his tent near the terebinth tree at Tisan Naim, which is beside Kadesh. Verse 12. And they reported to Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to the mountain of Tabor.
And it is so. And it is so. Now let's look at the wife of Lapidoth. To be connected with Lapidoth, a torch. According to a rabbinic tradition, Deborah was called the woman of Lapidoth because she provided wicks for the lamp in the sanctuary. Lapidoth is to be identified with Barak. Both words having similar meaning, the latter signifying lightning. So she was a light, but she provided the wick. So you have to understand. And the thing about looking at the life of Deborah, she was a prophetess, but she was a woman of wealth. Mm-hmm. She had money. She was not broke at all. At that time, when they returned to Yahuwah in penitence, she dwelt in her house there. Palm tree of Deborah. She possessed palm trees in Jericho, vineyards in Ramah, and olive trees in Bethel. Between Ramah and Bethel, it is not to be deduced that she lived somewhere between these two places, but that she was a very rich woman and drew her income from these cities. Mm-hmm. She resided in Torah, Yahush 16, and 7. Came up to her for judgment. She acted as a judge in Yasharal and functioned as a prophetess, but her power of prophecy, it says, was limited, being confined to imminent events and not to the more distant future. Once again, this is what they interject in there. Sent and called Barak. If she was Barak's wife, she must have lived apart from her husband from the moment the prophetic call came to her. Or her usual residence was in Kadesh, Naphtali, but she used to go to the palm tree between Ramah and Bethel to function as judge. Once again, you have to understand these are the inserts that are put in there, basically saying she had to live somewhere else and so forth. But if you are a wealthy person, you're going to be wherever you want to be. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And I don't believe she was apart from her Ash. I'm sorry. I believe that she was there with him as he was with her. Have not Yahuwah commanded? This cannot have been the opening words of Deborah's conversation with him. Scripture records only that part of the conversation essential to the narrative. So that means that there was something else that took place, but it was deliberately kept out. As I said before, I believe with all my heart, there are some things that the Abba would have us to know, and then there are some things that are left a mystery for a reason. Barak was to use persuasive oratory to induce Yasharal to do battle with Sisera. As they feared his vast army, Yahuwah did not draw the Yasharalite host to Mount Tabor as he said he would draw Sisera to the brook Kishbron, because he only interposes with a miracle when it is essential, and that was not so in this instance. In other words, when there is a miracle needed, it will come. When there is not, it won't. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So it's important we understand that. We try to throw miracles everywhere, and there are times that it's not necessary because there are certain things that can be done in a certain manner. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now it says, if thou wilt go with me. Barak gave this reply because he depended on her merit for the divine aid. So once again, many people say, well, she was not a leader. She was not a teacher. You can't be a judge and not teach. You can't be a judge or a shaftim and not know Torah. That's impossible. And not lead. She already told him what he needed to do. So she was giving out what? Instructions, and she was instructing who? A man. But she told him, she said, you're not going to win, and a woman's going to win. Are you following me? You know, many said, well, according to this, some of them said it was not prophetic. It was prophetic. That was prophetic. She said, you're not going to win it, but it's going to be at the hands of a woman. Are you following me?
Yes.
So it's important we understand that Abba Yahuwah can use whomever he wants to when he wants to.
That's right.
We're the ones that always have problems with gender. Well, that's a woman. It can't be done. Wow, really? You're going to limit the Abba? Sit down. Now, verse 9, into the hands of a woman. This was not, according to them, as I said, they said this was not a prophecy of what was to happen, but a statement that the victory would be associated with her name and not with Barak's. It is held that it was a prophecy that Sisera will fall by the hand of Yael. So yes, it was prophecy. Once again, you have two different opinions. One says, no, it is prophecy. Then another says that it is to be correlated with the name of Deborah. But Deborah is not the one who slew, are you hearing me, the commander of Sisera?
Yes.
But it was Yael, so that was prophecy. And it is so.
It is so.
All right, let's finish reading.
Verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
And Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him, from Harosheth of the Gentiles unto the river of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, up, for this is the Yom which Yahuwah has delivered Sisera into thy hand. Is not Yahuwah gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. And Yahuwah discomfited Sisera and all his chariots and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles. And all the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Yael, the Asha of Heber, the Kenite. For there was shalom between Yabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. And Yael went out to meet Sisera, and said unto him, turn in, my master, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with the mantle. And he said unto her, give me, I pray you, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him drink, and covered him. Again he said unto her, stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man does come and inquire of thee, and says, is there any man here? You shall say, no. And it is so.
And it is so. Verse 17. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite. For there was a shalom between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Heber, the Kenite. So he thinking because there's shalom there. But remember, she's on the outskirts, and she is also in shalom with the children of Yasharah. So she's not going to turn against them either. And so, verse 18, and Jael went out to meet Sisera and said unto him, turn in to me, fear not. And he turned in unto her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said unto her, give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened the bottle with milk. Now, warm milk induces what? Sleep. People say, oh, I can't sleep. What the first thing people check? Well, drink a cup of warm milk. No, I have to have some chocolate in mine. Can't do no warm milk. But I can do some chocolate milk when I can drink it. That's the best time. But it induces sleep. So, he took it the direction that which his army took. Not in the direction in which his army took, but the tent of Yael for safety. So he didn't even go in the direction that his people went. He went in the opposite direction. So he had no cover. And so once again, a bottle of milk, she substituted milk because it induced sleep. So she already knew the effect that it would have on him. Gave him drink and covered him. After she gave him milk to drink, she again covered him that he should fall fast asleep. Stand. Some explain the verb as infinitive. He told her to stand. As Barak pursued, not finding Sisera among the fleeing troops, he turned in another direction to search for him. So it's important that we understand that she covered him to truly make him feel safe. I ain't gonna turn you. I'm gonna let you, sleep under this cover, because you can go ahead and rest yourself. But she's gonna take him out because of who he belongs to. All right, let's read chapter 5 and let's continue. Let's read 9 verses.
Chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. On that day, Deborah the son of Abinoam, sang. When the leaders led in Yasharal, when the people volunteered, praise Yahuwah. Listen, kings, pay attention, princes. I will sing to Yahuwah. I will sing praises to Yahuwah, power of Yasharal. Yahuwah, when you came from Seir, when you marched through the fields of Edom, the earth trembled, the Shemayim poured rain, and the clouds poured water. The mountains melted before Yahuwah, even Sidiyah before Yahuwah, the Savior of Yasharal. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Yair, the main ways were deserted because travelers kept to the side roads. Villages were deserted, they were deserted in Yasharal. Until I, Jaboriah, arose, a mother in Yasharal. Yasharal chose new gods, then war was in the gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Yasharal. My heart is with the leaders of Yasharal, with the volunteers of the people. Praise Yahuwah. You who ride on white donkeys, who sit on saddle blankets, and who drive along the road, give praise.
And it is so. And it is so. All right. Deborah and Barak. Deborah is mentioned first as the leading figure in the story. The song was composed by her. So now listen at verse 2. Let grow their hair. The verb means to make a breach, destroy, after punishment has been exact from Yasharal because they forsook Yahuwah and they voluntarily repent from their sins. Then is it time to Baruch Yahuwah for the salvation he works on their behalf. The verb means to avenge. When vengeance is exacted and Yasharal volunteer and exert themselves to go to war, both for the great and the evil that ensued, Yasharal having been inerrant, surrenders through oppression by Jabin and Sisera. Now that they volunteer to rise against them, Yahuwah will Baruch them. So in other words, it's like, stop being pacifists. Stop just letting these things happen. Rise up and do what the Abba has said. He's given us the ability to fight back, and he's given us the ability to fight against the enemy. We don't have to sit and say, well, I'm going to wait till we get home and do. No, we have a right to rise up, especially when we know what the enemy is trying to do. So we can rise up and move forward. All right, let's finish reading. Mm-hmm.
By the voice of the shouters, between the places of drawing water, there they recount the righteous acts of Yahuwah, the righteous acts of his leadership in Yasharal. Then the people of Yahuwah shall go down to the gates. Wake up, Deboriah. Wake up, sing a song. Arise, Barak, lead your captives away, O son of Abinoam. Then he set the remnant to rule the nobles. Yahuwah came down for me against the mighty ones. Out of Ephraim the root is against Amalek. After you, Benjamin, with your people. Out of Machir lawyers come down, out of Zebulun, those of whom handle the scribes read. And the heads of Yissaschar were with Deboriah. And as Yissaschar was Barak sent into the valley under his command. Among the divisions of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. Why did you remain amongst the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flocks? The divisions of Reuben have great searchings of heart. Gilad remained beyond the Yarden, and why did Dan remain on his ships? Asher continued to the seashore and remained by its landings. Verse 16. Why did you remain among the sheepfolds? Zebulun is a people who risk their lives to the point of death. Naphtali also on the heights of the field. Sovereigns came, they fought, and the sovereigns of Canaan fought in the Tanakh. By the waters of Megiddo, they took no spoils of silver. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, sing the song as it is being sung in this manner. Once again, when you look at verse 9, my heart is toward the governors of Yasharal that offered themselves willingly among the people. Baruch ye Yahuwah. Once again, very important for us to look at leadership and what is being provoked here, what is being done here at this time. It's very important that we understand, contrary to popular belief, as I constantly say, we can't let gender be the reason for not listening and following to the one that the Yahweh has appointed. She encouraged them, she inspired them to get up and go to battle because it was what was needed.
That's right.
Their commander wasn't doing it, and she said, tell him to come to me because we need to speak. Because the Abba was speaking to her to provoke him to do these things. So it's important that we understand, let not gender be the reason that we falter and fumble and fail because we can't get past who the Abba is using at this appointed time. And so it's important that we see these things. Very important. Let's continue reading.
From the heavens they fought. The stars from their courses fought against Sisera. The Wadi of Bashan swept them away. That age-old Wadi, the Wadi of Bashan, O my being, you have trampled in strength. They stamped hoofs of horses with the gallopings of his steeds. Curse Merzog, said a messenger of Yahuwah. Curse its inhabitants, because they did not come to the help of Yahuwah, among the mighty. Blessed above women is Yael, the wife of Heber, the Quinite. Above women in tents she is blessed. He asked for water, she gave milk. She brought out curdled milk in a bowl for nobles. She stretched her hand to the tent peg, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. Then she pounded Sisera. She smashed his head. She pierced and struck through the sides of his head. Between her feet he bowed. He fell. He lay still. Between her feet he bowed. He fell. Where he bowed, there he fell, destroyed. Through the window of the mother of Sisera looked, and cried out through the lattice. Why does his chariot delay from come? Why have the steps of his chariots tarried? The wise ones of her princesses answered her, indeed. She answered herself. Verse 30.
Mhm.
Do they not find and divide the spoil? A girl or two for each man, a spoil of dyed work for Sisera, a spoil of dyed work embroidered, dyed work richly embroidered for the neck of the looter.
And it is so.
So
Now let's look at this about Yael. Verse 24. Baruch shall Yael be in contrast to Miraz, which is cursed, since she contributed to the victory. So she contributed to the victory, and that is why she was Baruch. Women in the tent. The Midrash makes this allude to the four matriarchs. Yael, who lived in a tent, will be Baruch above all women who dwell in tents. The milk she gave him to see if he was wakeful enough to distinguish between the taste of water and milk, to make him sleep. A bowl, but this was a bowl that held significance. It's not just you go in and grab a plastic bowl. No, she gave him a nice bowl. That bowl that when you treat a person, make them comfortable. You're not coming as enemies. You're coming to me as one I can be comfortable with. And it says, after giving him milk from a bottle, she gave him curd to eat in a bowl. You know what curd is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That comes off the milk. So they would eat that. They would eat that. Now listen at this. In verse 26, her hand, that is her left hand, so she was a left-handed woman.
Mm-hmm.
She killed him with her left hand, but watch what it says to the workmen. When it says her hand she put to the tent pin, which was her left hand, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. She was ambidextrous. She used both of her hands. You don't hear about that though. This woman was a woman that was extraordinary. She was gifted. And it says to the workman's armilium, hammer, renders for the striking of him who was tired. So she took that hammer with her right hand. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
But she was able to destroy him with her left hand. She put to the tent pin, her hand she put to the tent pin, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. So she took the right hand, bam. So she was able to do that with both of her hands. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And you have to understand she has some strength, because she was able to put that in his skull, and she was able to stake him down. And that's where they found him, right between her feet, where she tacked him to the floor. Made him a part of the carpet. He sunk, he fell. The verbs are repeated for emphasis. The meaning is that she skillfully contrived that he should fall down in a deep sleep, and as soon as he had fallen, she put an end to his life. So she made sure he was sleep. You know what you say? You're weak. You wake. No movement. They sleep. And she was able to take him out. So she was a major contributor to the victory of Yasharal. Now, verse 28 appeared. She to be rendered muttered, but preferably looked. She raised a cry, but the Targum translates peered. On failing to see the arrival of Sisera's chariot, she shrieked in lament. She returned, answered to herself. She tried to dispel her fears regarding her son's fate by giving herself the same comforting answer as her companions gave her. Are they not dividing the spoil? This is the reason for the delay. A damsel they delay may be caused by the rape of the young women. So it's kind of just bringing out a song and just kind of alluding. When they sung, they made sure you saw everything that was going on at that time. They left nothing, no stone unturned. So we look at this once again. We see that this woman was was very skillful in what she did, and she had a mission, and she was part of that to bring the victory to the children of Yahshua. And it is so. Um, let's finish reading.
Into chapter 6 or just verse 1?
Chapter 5, we just verse 30.
Verse 31. So let all thine enemies perish, O Yahuwah, but let them that have him be as the sun when he goes forth in his might, and the land had rest 40 years.
And it is so. 40 years the land rested. Finally, it come to a place to where it rested. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. All right. Let's look at Yehukin and Moshe chapter 8, and let's just read to verse 20. Let's read just to verse 20. Once again, looking at let's read to verse 26. Yeah, let's read to verse 26. Let's do 8 verses so we can see the miracles of Yahushua. All right, let's read. Yeah, Mark chapter 8.
Mark chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. In those days there was again a large crowd, and they had nothing to eat. He summoned the disciples and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd because they've already stayed with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way, and some of them will go visit. The disciples answered him, where can anyone get enough bread here in this desolate place to fill these people? How many loaves do you have? He asked them. 7, they said to him. Then he commanded the crowd to sit down on the ground. Taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks, broke the loaves, and kept on giving them to his disciples to set before the people. So they served the loaves to the crowd. They also had 3 small fish, and when he had grouped them, he said these were to be served as well. They ate and were filled. Then they collected 7 large baskets of leftover pieces. About 4,000 men were there. He dismissed them and immediately got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. And did so.
And it is so. All right, let's finish reading.
Verse 11 reads, the Pharisees came out and began to dispute with him, seeking from him a sign from Shemayim drank. And sighing deeply in his spirit, he said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign shall be given to this generation. And leaving them, again entering into the boat, he went away to the other side. And they had forgotten to take bread, and they did not have more than 1 loaf with them in the boat. And he was warning them, saying, mind, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herodes. And they were reasoning with one another, saying, because we have no bread. And Yahushua, being aware of it, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not perceive nor understand? Is your heart still hardened? Having ears do you not see, or having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many baskets filled with the broken pieces did you pick up? They said to him, 12. And it is so.
And it is so. All right. Once again, we're looking at Yahushua as a leader and giving instructions. Do not take the leaven of the Pushim, And they constantly always were finding a reason to fight with him. And he says unto them, Behold, beware of the leaven of the Pushim and of the leaven of Herod. We know leaven also is what? Represents sin. A heresy. In other words, he said, don't become like they are. Don't do things that is contrary to your walk. Don't say one thing with your mouth and that your actions dictate or say something totally different. This is important. Why is it important for us as a people to be careful with how we do things and how we convey things? Because you have to understand, people are always right there like vultures and like piranhas, waiting to gobble you up at the very words that come out of your mouth. They are. And this is why it is important that you know the people you deal with. Because if not, once again, people going to be people. But he's telling them, be careful and be aware of the leaven, of the Pushim and of Herod. And they will reason with one another, saying, because we have no bread. And Yahushua, being aware of it, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Is your heart still hardened? And he's asking them, have you been with me all this time to know that I'm not going to say something to you that doesn't have any merit? Are y'all following me? Yes. Remember, because they're trying to get to the other side and they forgot the bread. But was he getting on them about leaving the bread? No, he was getting on them about their attitude. The attitude. Are y'all following me? And then he says, having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets filled with broken pieces did you pick up? They said to him, 12. And when I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many large baskets filled with broken pieces did you pick up? And they said 7. And he said to them, how do you not understand? He's asking them, how do you not understand? Once again, you have to understand, Abba Yahuwah understands or wanted them to understand the miracle power through Yahush. He wasn't concerned about the bread, because it's like, did you not know I took that little bit and fed all those people, and look at how much we took back up. So that's not the issue, but the issue is your attitude. It's important that how we enter a thing, we watch our attitude, and how we exit a situation is very important with our attitudes. Because your attitude is truly going to be is going to determine your altitude. Many people just use it as a coined a saying, or just, it's a catchy phrase. It's not just a catchy phrase. It has relevance to it. Because our attitude towards many things is going to either provoke us to move forward, or it is going to hinder us and stop us from doing the things that the Abba has truly impressed upon us to do. Do you understand?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand this. So Yahushua dealing with them concerning their attitude concerning the situation. He wasn't worried about the bread, because he could always bring about these things. But it's their attitude in leaving the bread, and their attitude in how they dealt with the whole situation. Excuse me. And he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. And taking the blind man by the hand, he led him out of the village. And having spit on his eyes, laying hands on him, he asked him, do you see at all? And mind you, he's blind. Can you imagine him working this miracle in the presence of people, spitting on this man? How the people would have truly found some reason. They would have found something to be negative about. They would have found something to complain about. They would have found something to just be really ignorant about. They would have. Then he had to understand the belief of the people. They didn't believe because they kept saying, show us a sign. Okay, you take, you take 5 loaves and feed 5,000 people, and then you take up 12 baskets full of food. That's not a miracle enough? Or you feed 4,000 and then you take up 7 baskets. That's not a miracle enough? Once again, you have to understand they were fishing for things they themselves just wanted to be nitpicky about. And having spit on his eyes, laying hands on him, he asked him, do you see at all? He spit in his eyes and then laid hands. Boy, can you imagine the crowd? And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he placed his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw all clearly. And he sent him away to his home, saying, do not go into the village. Now you have to understand the reason why. There were times when I was in Christianity that when I would read this and we would hear, or I would hear Yahuwah say, don't do a thing, I always chunked it up as being reverse psychology. It was not reverse psychology. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. The reason he would tell people not to do is because of the thronging, and because of those that would come would be a mixed multitude of people. And remember, the mission and the goal was to the lost children or the lost sheep of Yahshua.
Right.
And so if you have a multitude of other people thronging and pushing in, how do you get to your own?
Right.
So he was trying to be very discreet and use wisdom. And you have to understand the reason why he would tell him not to go into the village, because he didn't want him to be criticized and even possibly killed for his testimony of the great things that the Abba had done through his son Yahush. Are you following me?
Yes.
You have to understand, back in that time and even now, people were horrible. And they would have literally destroyed his belief. So he warned him not to go back into the village, because he understood the mentality and the character of the people. Whenever Abba Yahuwah frees you from a place and does a great thing for you, don't go back into the place where he took you out of. Well, I'm going to go back and get them people. If he wanted them out, don't you know he would have stayed there and did it where they were? For it to be an open sign, an open testimony. He did it because he wants to take us out of that place. Every place is not going to have a witness. Every place is not going to be Baruch to have a witness for them to see certain things. Some things is going to be a witness against them because of their attitude.
Mm-hmm.
But he told him not to go back. He said, do not go into the village. Now, are you hearing me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. Now, I want you to go back and I want you to finish reading all of chapter 8. Read it all the way to chapter 10. Okay? Read it all the way to chapter 10. To verse 31. Chapter 8, verse 1. And I want you to go all the way to chapter 10, verse 31. That's what I want you to read. Okay?
Yes.
And I'm going to finish reading it. But we're going to stop here. And we are going to close it out. But I want you to read that, because I want you to continue to look at the life of Yahush and look at the things as a leader he had to endure when trying to bring the children, the lost sheep, the prostituting sheep of Yahshua back into truth. And with all of the interference and all the things that was going on, it is important that we look at his life and see that he was able to do it. And because he was able to do it, so can we.
That's right.
Very important for us to understand these things. Not only do we want to look at this, but we will also want to be able to look at it and also bring it into alignment with Shema chapter 13. And then we also want to align it with Shoftim chapter 4 all the way to chapter 5. Why? Because we want to be able to connect the dots. You have so many people that fight against the renewed covenant, not the New Testament, the renewed covenant. And it's important that we be able to connect the dots and see that the renewed covenant is a platform of the Torah. It is a platform where we continue to see that which moved on. Many people get caught up and say, I'm only a Torah believer, but you start thinking, okay, so what happened to the generation before us? Right. And the generation before our ancestors and their ancestors and those that are close to us. So what happened in between that time? They missed that time frame. So it's important that we're able to connect the dots and connect the time frames and connect that so we don't have two pieces of bread and nothing in the middle. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So it's important that we're able to connect the dots and connect it and make it a full-fledged combination to where we're able to see from there, the middle, and all the way to the renewed covenant, the experiences, the action, and all that took place. So I want to encourage you to read once again Mark chapter 8, starting at verse. Go back and read verse 1 again, and read all the way to chapter 10, verse 31. Read it and allow Abba Yahuwah to minister to your heart these very important principles and these very important guidelines that we draw from him, draw from the Abba, from his son, Yahushua Mashiach. And I want to say to you, Torah, those of you that stuck and stayed with us, we got a late start, had some family matters to deal with, but nonetheless, we still press forward because I believe in bringing it to you and bringing the conclusion to the matter as such. And I want you to continue to ruminate, continue to eat, continue to allow the instructions of the Abba to be digested in your Ruach, and never tire of his instructions. I know there are times that we are in here lengthy times, but it's because of our chapters become lengthy. But I'm not unmindful of those things, but I want to always bring to you what is given to me so that you can take that and you can apply it to your life as I apply it to mine. So once again, I want you to remember to remain encouraged, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and continue to operate in and upon the instructions that the Abba has given us, his Torah. I want you to remember that I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, Hebraic Belief Congregation located in South Carolina. I want you to remember here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, Hebraic Belief Congregation, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to remember without a shadow of a doubt that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so. And it is so.